Welcome to Chapter 10 of The Case of the Clock Tower Key, a 12-part Sherlock Holmes mystery. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let the story unfold. If you missed the previous chapter, please visit to my channel and enjoy the journey of Sherlock Holmes. The confrontation, when it came, was both terrifying and deeply tragic. Alistair Vance stood before us, not as a monstrous villain, but as a man utterly consumed by his own delusion. The gaunt, wild-eyed figure that confronted us in the echoing sub-basement was a mere vessel for the madness that had taken root in his mind. A madness born of solitude, superstition, and the incessant, rhythmic voice of the machine he had once served. He held the heavy iron wrench not as a weapon, but as a scepter, a symbol of his self-appointed role as the tower's savior. His eyes, burning with a feverish intensity, were not the eyes of a man who sought to do harm, but of a zealot, a true believer on the cusp of performing a sacred and long-awaited ritual. "You cannot understand," he said, his voice a low, rasping whisper that was almost lost beneath the deafening rhythmic scrape of the unbalanced flywheel. "For years, I have listened to its voice. I have felt its pain. The endless turning, the relentless ticking, the screaming chime. It is a torment, a life sentence of eternal, mechanical servitude. But I have found the key. I have found the way to give it peace." Holmes, ever the master of human psychology, did not immediately challenge the keeper's delusion. Instead, he took a step forward, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture, and spoke to Vance in a calm, measured tone, as if he were addressing a frightened animal. "We do not wish to interfere with your work, Mr. Vance," Holmes said, his voice a model of soothing reason. "We too have heard the tower's voice. We too have felt its great and ancient sorrow. We have come not to stop you, but to help you, to ensure that the ritual is performed correctly." It was a masterful stroke. By appearing to accept the keeper's twisted logic, by entering into his delusional world, Holmes had momentarily disarmed him. Vance paused, his brow furrowed in confusion, the wrench held loosely in his hand. "Help me," he repeated, the words sounding strange and foreign on his lips. "Yes," Holmes said, taking another slow, deliberate step forward. "The rhyme, the instructions left by the great architect Thomas Croft. It is a complex and delicate procedure. A single mistake could be catastrophic. It could damage the heart of the tower rather than giving it the peace it deserves. Allow us to assist you, to ensure that the final act is performed with the precision and reverence it requires." For a moment, I thought the ruse might work. Vance seemed to be considering Holmes's words, his mad certainty momentarily shaken by the appearance of these two strangers who seemed to understand and even share his sacred mission. But the moment was fleeting. The madness that had claimed him was too deep, too powerful to be so easily dislodged. His eyes narrowed, and a look of cunning suspicion replaced his confusion. "You are lying," he hissed, his voice suddenly sharp and venomous. "You are outsiders. You are here to stop me, to keep it in its agony. The Watcher warned me you would come." He raised the wrench, his knuckles white. "You will not interfere," he screamed, his voice rising to a fever pitch, a thin, reedy sound that was almost lost in the cacophony of the scraping flywheel. "I am the keeper. I am its chosen one." With a wild, guttural cry, he lunged, not at Holmes, but at the great wobbling flywheel, the source of the tower's torment. He swung the heavy wrench with all his might, aiming for the central axle, the very heart of the mechanism. It was a suicidal act, an attempt to smash the machine that would have undoubtedly resulted in his own death, caught in the flailing, unpredictable motion of the massive wheel. But Holmes was faster. With a speed and agility that was startling in a man of his languid habits, he threw himself at Vance, tackling him around the waist and pulling him back from the brink of the spinning metallic monster. The two men fell to the floor in a tangle of limbs, the wrench flying from Vance's grasp and clattering across the stone floor. The struggle that followed was a desperate and clumsy affair. A chaotic ballet of flailing arms and legs in the flickering lantern light. Vance, though thin, was possessed of a madman's strength, and he fought with a silent, ferocious intensity. I rushed to Holmes's aid, and together we managed to subdue the struggling keeper, pinning him to the floor. He did not cry out, he did not plead. He simply lay there, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with a look of utter, uncomprehending despair, the tears of a failed savior streaming down his grimy cheeks. With Vance restrained, his wild energy finally spent, Holmes rose to his feet, his face grim, and his clothes covered in the dust and grime of the sub-basement floor. He retrieved the fallen wrench and then turned his attention to the final, crucial part of the mechanism. "The last stills the voice that screams out in pain," he quoted, his voice low and steady. He pointed to a large iron lever that was connected to the axle of the great flywheel. It was the final piece of the fail-safe mechanism, the switch that would disengage the flywheel and silence its maddening voice forever. He took a firm grip on the lever and, with a single decisive movement, he pulled it downward. The effect was instantaneous and profound. With a final grinding screech, the great flywheel disengaged from its drive mechanism. It continued to spin for a few moments under its own momentum, its speed gradually decreasing, until at last, with a low sighing groan, it came to a complete and final stop. And then there was silence. A silence so deep, so absolute, so complete, that it was almost a physical blow. The rhythmic scraping sound that had been our constant companion, the sound that had driven Alistair Vance to the brink of madness and beyond, was gone. The tower was still. The voice was silenced. In the aftermath of that sudden shocking quiet, the scene in the sub-basement took on a strange theatrical quality. The three of us, Holmes, myself, and our subdued captive, were frozen in a tableau of exhaustion and relief. The lantern cast long dancing shadows on the damp stone walls. And in the center of it all, the great silent machine stood as a testament to the fine line between genius and madness, between order and chaos. Alistair Vance, his fight now completely gone, seemed to shrink in on himself. As the voice of the tower died, so too did the fire in his eyes. He was no longer the watcher, the savior, the chosen one. He was just a man, a broken, tragic figure who had lost his way in the dark and lonely corridors of his own mind. The silence he had so desperately sought to bring to the tower had, in the end, brought him only a deafening and desolate emptiness. Thank you for listening to Chapter 10 of The Case of the Clock Tower Key. If you enjoyed the mystery and want more stories like this, Please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with fellow mystery lovers. Your support helps keep the stories alive. See you in the next chapter.